So this video that I'm going to be responding to is rather vague. It doesn't go into specifics, but knowing the other content and people that this channel brings on, I can guess that it's aimed at progressive Christians, not conservative Christians. And I think he does mention progressives at one point. So I'm going to make a rebuttal to this video and why I think this person's wrong.
Become Catholic today, given the shenanigans taking place in the church? I mean, there were shenanigans going on back then too, of course, but there is an attack on tradition. I don't know why you would want to label it differently. It seems to be an attack coming from the head down. Two questions, I suppose. Would that have impacted your coming into the church? And then I want to know what you think about it today.
Well, the first thing...
What's all this about being attacked? You never call members who are lower down as being attacked if they have disagreements with the church on abortion or gay marriage. So you're just a hypocrite. You have a double standard. You could say, my interpretation is right. Everybody thinks their interpretation is right. That's why they have that interpretation. So you can make arguments, but don't come in here with this nonsense that you're being attacked and say that you are being attacked in a different way than people who disagree with you, that have an unpopular opinion. And you also say it's an attack on tradition and that the church never changes. Changes all the time. What do you call the church when it was advocating Nazism, or when the church burned Jews and women as witches at the stake? Now you can say Jesus taught us to love, and that burning witches was only a rule for the ancient Jews. You could also say that about homosexuality. Now you could say, as some priests have, that everyone or a lot of cultures practiced homosexuality, and so it was more general. Every culture practiced slavery. Does that mean that slavery is okay when in the Bible it seems to suggest so? Servants, be good to your master, or suffer many stripes, something like that in the Bible, right? Or dash the babies' heads against the rocks when going into war. Now here's a really strange thing. Are you going to say that genocide and mass murder and slavery was okay for the Jews but nobody else? Are you going to say it was okay for everyone? Or are you going to fall back and say, well, these were men inspired by the Word of God, but still of their time? In which case you could say the same thing about the passages that condemn homosexuality. If suffer not a witch to live, and servants be good to your master, and every other thing you don't like about the Bible was just men of their time writing it, then so can homosexuality.
And the Catholic Church is a mystical body of Jesus Christ, which lives in God's omnipresence. So if anybody at any stage in God's omnipresence contradicts what the church has always taught, that person's wrong. So what I learned from Chesterton was the fact that there's as to use the phraseology of Benedict XVI, a hermeneutic of continuity, that the church doesn't change her mind, that the church may have to confront the Soviet Union, it might confront communism, but it will be judging communism with the same criteria it judged Arianism. In other words, from the perspective of orthodoxy. So that doesn't change. And one of my favorite ways of looking at this is actually
Oh yeah, don't investigate too far into what the Vatican was doing during World War II.
J.R.R. Tolkien. And in the 1960s, there was this mania for trying to get back to the so-called purity of the early church. And Tolkien said, I don't understand why a sapling is considered to be superior to the full-grown tree. And he said, and even if the sapling is superior to the full-grown tree, if you chop down the full-grown tree looking for the sapling, you don't find the sapling, you kill the tree. So this understanding of the Catholic Church as a 2,000-year-old tree, and Chesterton uses the same imagery. He says about tradition as the philosophy of the tree, and relativism as the philosophy of the cloud, right? And these two rock-solid metaphors. That if you understand the mystical body of Christ as growing through the ages like a tree, then that tree is not going to be cut down because someone, at any particular moment in this history, tries to cut it down by teaching something other than what the church has always taught. And we should see people that are teaching in the 21st century in the same way as teaching in the 11th century.
Wait, wouldn't tradition be the sapling, not the full-grown tree? And there are all sorts of things that become tradition that you then rejected, like, again, burning witches. So where's your logic?
Church apart in the past. They haven't ripped the church apart, by the way. They didn't rip the church apart. They ripped Christians apart. That were at least as damaging as what we see now, with the majority of bishops believing a heresy as in the time of the Arians, right? And the gates of hell have never, ever prevailed. And we need to see all of those heresies in the present. In other words, in the light of God's omnipresence. This is not something that's developing. If we're not careful, we all become progressives. Right, we think that somehow that things that were in the past are not anymore. Everything's up for grabs. We're moving towards this sort of chaos in the future, or golden age, if you think it's a good thing. But either way, we're moving beyond the past to something new. And if you actually understand human history, apart from this ecclesiology we've been talking about, there are three main threads in human history: the good, the bad, and the beautiful. And Pope Benedict talked about this as well, but there were the saints who were always in the minority and usually largely powerless and usually being persecuted by the bad, who are usually the majority with nearly all the political power, motivated by political worldly aims and desires and not by truth, goodness or beauty. And then there's the beautiful. There are the beautiful things made by man using his imagination, God's image in him, to the glory of God. And
listen to this guy's victim complex. You aren't being treated any worse than any other Catholic that has a minority view. So that's it for today. If you like my content, like, share, leave a comment. Main takeaway, don't be these guys.